I only know that soon we'll be together.
I sure as hell hope not. Because if I'm being honest here, I would rather piss blood than look at your stupid face again.
It won't take much to win.
So, once again, welcome to the worst characters in video games, where I go over exactly what's wrong with certain characters in the area of interactive entertainment. And this time I am focusing this particular episode, if you will, on the character Lightning from the Final Fantasy series. Now, this character is an interesting case, because Lightning really is an example of just how far gone the Final Fantasy franchise has become. And she's also the perfect example of what happens when a gaming company stops listening to their fan base. So, this character first originally appeared in the Final Fantasy 13 series, which first was released in Japan in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, before coming officially to the United States in 2010. The original Final Fantasy 13 spawned two sequels, Final Fantasy 13-2 and Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, also known as Final Fantasy 13-3. Directly, Lightning was the protagonist of both the original Final Fantasy 13 and Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13. Since those games, Lightning has made appearances in the Dissidia Final Fantasy games, and her most recent appearance is Dissidia Final Fantasy NT, and she was also in World of Final Fantasy, which was also released a few years ago. So, the problem with Lightning as a character, there's a few different issues, a few glaring issues that's wrong with this character. First and foremost is her design. If you look closely at some of the original artwork of Lightning, and when I say original artwork, I'm not talking about concept art, I'm talking about the final design of the character as she appears in the first Final Fantasy 13. Lightning is shown to be a character that wears a skirt, some type of jacket. I'm not exactly sure what kind of jacket that is, but some kind of jacket. She wears a red cape, which is ridiculous within of itself, some combat boots, and a bunch of other shit that she probably doesn't even need. And her weapon of choice is a gunblade. And the gunblade within of itself is one of the dumbest things to come out of not just the Final Fantasy series, but the video game industry as a whole. The concept of a gun and a sword being molded together into one is stupid. And the way Lightning carries her gunblade is on her butt. This little bag that just hits her legs every time she runs. The design of her character doesn't make any sense if you look at it for what it is. But that's not even my issue with Lightning as a character in terms of her design. My issue actually comes from the fact that Lightning was originally created to be the exact opposite of Cloud Strife. She was created to be the female Cloud. And anyone who knows anything about the Final Fantasy series knows that Final Fantasy VII is the most popular game in the series. Cloud Strife is the protagonist of that game. There are people who don't play video games who know who that character is. So Square Enix tried to recreate, no pun intended, lightning in the bottle. And they couldn't just create Cloud again, so they had to do something different. So their solution was to create this pink-haired bitch and have her be the driving force for this new series in the Final Fantasy universe. And the reception to that was very lukewarm. A lot of people do not like Lightning for this very reason. And I'm not even going to discuss the fact that the developers of Final Fantasy 13 were dumb enough to give Lightning her own navel piercing. That is actually visible in-game when you're playing the game. If you zoom the camera in, the character has a belly button ring So it's like, as much as they tried to make her this femme fatale, who is a badass and a soldier, they couldn't help themselves but to pander to familiar video game tropes, where they go out of their way to try and make female characters more attractive. Yeah, I'm not even going to get into that, but something I will get into is the person who created Lightning, who is the second problem with the character, and obviously one of the character's biggest flaws. Matomu Toriyama, who directed the original Final Fantasy XIII and spearheaded the entire trilogy. This asshole, this clown, is the person who created this ridiculous, god-awful character. In fact, Matomu Toriyama as a whole, when it comes to his involvement with the Final Fantasy series in general, has not been met with positive reception, but rather the opposite. A lot of negativity and a lot of hatred has been pointed directly at this one guy, because essentially he is responsible for some of the worst games in the series. A series that spans 3 decades, that has millions of fans all over the world. And he created what's arguably the worst character in the series. A character that's so lifeless and dull that you wonder exactly how she even fits into the main pantheon of the Final Fantasy series. Which brings me to the next issue as to what's wrong with Lightning as a character. One of the biggest problems with Lightning is the fact that she doesn't have a backstory. Or rather, she does have a backstory, but it's not developed. Her backstory is essentially inconsequential to really anything that happens in any of the Final Fantasy XIII games. And if you compare that to some of the other main protagonists of the Final Fantasy series, Lightning comes off as extremely bland and uninteresting. About the only thing that you find out about Lightning in any of these games is the fact that her real name is Claire, and she changed her name to Lightning in some kind of false sense that it would make her a stronger person, which doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense at all. And really, Lightning's backstory is a huge missed opportunity, which is the thing that really kills me when it comes to discussing this character. Because Lightning is a soldier in her own universe. She joined some kind of force, and it takes a lot of strength to do something like that. It takes a lot of determination to join any type of military power. As someone who was at Paris Island myself, and had made the choice quite some time ago to join the Marine Corps, I understand what it takes to make that kind of decision and the mindset someone needs to have in order to make it through military training. It would have been very interesting to see Lightning in this situation, especially given the fact that she's a female. It would have been something very new, not just for Final Fantasy as a whole, but also for the video game industry in general, because no character like that has been created as of yet. And it would have been smart and wise of Square Enix to be the first company to tackle that kind of character. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And it's a real shame, because if I compare Lightning to the most recent Final Fantasy protagonist, Noctis from Final Fantasy XV, who is far more likable, better written, and has an actual developed backstory, once again I find myself asking, why didn't you guys do this for Lightning? And the sad truth about Noctis, given the fact that we learn about the character's backstory, and he actually has a full, completed character arc, really the only reason that Noctis exists is because Lightning was so terrible. The only way that Square Enix could go after the Final Fantasy XIII games was up. If they went any further down, the Final Fantasy series probably wouldn't be around right now. Just saying. If there was any further regression in terms of bad storytelling, terrible gameplay, the lack of interesting characters, or even a real purpose to give the player some kind of resolve for wasting their time, if Square Enix had regressed any further, the Final Fantasy series would effectively be dead. So as a quick recap, problems with Lightning: her design, her backstory, or lack of one, the person who created her, who's also responsible for some of the worst entries in the Final Fantasy series, and oh, I'm not done, because with this particular character, there's a few more important things that I didn't mention. such as Ali Hillis, the English voice actress for Lightning, who gives one of the most god-awful performances that I've seen for any character within the medium of video games. Lightning sounds like a block of wood in every single scene that she's in. There is no personality in her voice at all, whatsoever.
More than one miracle took place that day. Cocoon was saved by Fang and Vanille's sacrifice. We awoke from our crystal sleep, and our brands were gone.
I can't even really blame Ali Hillis, but once again, the person who is in charge of the sound design and directing the voice actors for these games. Their intention clearly was to make Lightning sound like a badass, because that's the original intent of the character to begin with. But what's the point of doing that if the character is not interesting? And Lightning sounds the same in every single game that she's in. Be it the Dissidia games, be it World of Final Fantasy, or the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy. She sounds like a block of wood in every single thing that she's been in. But here's the reason why I don't like Lightning personally. It's not that her design is stupid. It's not that the person who created her is a dumbass who should have never been given the reins over any entry in this series. It's not that the voice actress who's voicing her is giving a god-awful performance. It's not that Square Enix tried to sexualize a character that they tried to make a badass. No, the reason why I despise Lightning as a character, personally, is because she's a bitch. She's rude to pretty much every single person that she's around, and that just makes her character all the more unlikable. And again, had Lightning had an actual backstory and a developed character arc, to where it was explained why she's like this, then I could look past it. But considering that the character has no such thing, I can't really defend it. Take here, for example, this scene from the original Final Fantasy XIII. In this scene, it is Lightning's birthday. Lightning, who has a little sister in these games named Sarah, obviously wants to celebrate her older sibling's birthday. And she presents her with some good news, that she has become engaged to Snow, one of the protagonists from the original Final Fantasy XIII. And yet, with this news, as well as being presented with a gift on her birthday, this is how Lightning responds to such hospitality.
You became a lessee, so now you're gonna marry this idiot? And you think I'm gonna buy that? Full points for originality. But don't forget, if you really are a lessee, it's my job to deal with you. Sis. This is ridiculous. Worst birthday ever.
Wait, Sarah!
She gets made a lessee and you pop the question?
Lightning, stop it!
No, you stop it! Get out of my house.
You're shutting her out! She's your sister! Fine. I'll do it. I'll protect her.
So this is the character that I'm supposed to be rooting for in this game. This is the character that I'm supposed to fall behind and hope that they succeed in their goals throughout pretty much the entire game. Yeah, after witnessing that scene, I'm not really feeling Lightning as a character. And the worst part is that Lightning's not even the main character of her own game. The two characters that make the biggest difference in Final Fantasy XIII is Fang and Vanille. In fact, Fang and Vanille really are the protagonists of the game. Lightning's not even really the main character. She's just the character they put on the cover art. Then if I combine that with the fact that the character's story arc for the Final Fantasy XIII sequels, which is nothing but a bunch of jumbled random nonsense, that makes me hate this character even more. Because essentially Lightning in Final Fantasy XIII 2 and Lightning Returns becomes some kind of messenger for God.
Valhalla. Beyond time. Beyond life and death. Another world of shifting gloom. The chaotic realm of the goddess Etro. What power had brought me to this alien shore?
Hell, this scene alone is so ridiculous that I could just replace the music and not say anything, and the scene will speak for itself as to how stupid it is.
The entire span of time, I gazed upon the future of mankind and sensed Etro's divine will.
makes you love drunk off my hump. My hump, my hump, my hump, my hump, my hump. My hump, my hump, my hump. My lovely little lumps. Check it out. I drive these brothers crazy. I do it on the daily. They treat me really nicely. They buy me all these ices. Dolce and Gabbana, Fendi and Adana. Karen, they be sharing all their money. Got me wearing fly.
And then later she becomes God herself, kills another god, somehow creates an entire universe, and she retires somewhere in France. What kind of fucking shit was this guy smoking? Whatever shit he was on, I don't want any part of that at all. And I'm not even going to get into the fucking fangirls that these games have created. So all in all, Lightning is one of the worst characters in the medium of video games. She is effectively, I wouldn't say the worst, but one of the absolute worst characters in all of Final Fantasy. And the games that she appeared in did more damage than they did good, because essentially what they did was divide the fan base, many of whom have turned on Square Enix, to the point where Square Enix was forced to make a game that met the conditions of a modern AAA game, or just be forgotten in the wide sea of video game development studios that have shut down. And there's plenty of ways that they could have made Lightning more likable and more interesting as a character. And some of the things that they could have done, I mentioned earlier in the video. But of course, they didn't. So that's the video, and there's still quite a few different characters that I would like to make videos for in this small little series. So until next time, I look forward to whatever the next character will be.